It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host, Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, what's going on, sir?
You know, the drama over me being promoted to co-host, it didn't ring quite as well on Twitter, because apparently all the drama that's happening in Dallas-based sports media is involved in the Mavericks. So for the first time in history, the Cowboys are skating by while watching another DFW Metroplex organization kind of get lambasted for bad mismanagement, right?
Yeah, it's nice to see a different Dallas owner meddling in stuff he probably shouldn't meddle in, right?
Maybe. Yeah, it is.
We're going to try to provide a relief from basketball talk and talk about the Dallas Cowboys today, and we're going to talk about something that also doesn't matter, running backs, Landon. Let's go.
Wow, that's a segue. That is a segue.
That's a segue.
Congrats.
Yes, we're gonna preview the Cowboys running backs heading into training camp. And let's start with Ezekiel Elliott. It's hard to believe, Landon, but we are entering year 6 of the Ezekiel Elliott experience in Dallas. Last year, arguably the worst year of his career, he had 979 rushing yards. He averaged 4.0 yards per carry. What are we expecting from Zeke in 2021?
Well, I think everybody's is predicting a resurgence. I mean, and I think it's based on kind of, you know, all of the elements that that make a running back not matter, I guess, right? It's like the return of the health of the offensive line. You know, I think having Dak back as well is also going to help Zeke not have to be the main focal point of the offense and not have to be kind of the driving force necessarily by himself. And I think that, you know, for what we've seen in his offseason training and that sort of thing, he looks to be in incredible shape. And again, we keep bringing this up, but last year he had COVID. You know, it's still kind of weird that we just kind of blew past that whole thing because he showed up to camp and he played football. But you know, every single player, every single athlete, it seems like that had, you know, COVID seemed to have some kind of like lingering effects. So I think it stands to reason that Zeke had those as well. So. You know, based on what we're hearing from minicamp practices, from OTA practices, based on what we're seeing on some of his social media posts on his training that he's been doing with the running back coach, positional coach, I think in Dallas. Mm-hmm. I mean, he looks like he's in incredible shape. He looks quicker than he has in years. It looks more like, and I think some people have commented on this as well. It looks more like that he has shaped his body to fit the kind of offense that we're going to be running with Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy, you know, as opposed to being kind of just this, you know, workhorse, you know, Clydesdale type run through you type. He's slimmed down a little bit. He's worked on his footwork. He looks a little bit quicker and shiftier. And I think that's going to serve him well next season.
All right. So trying to be very delicate with all this because I know there's people that think I hate Zeke, and that's not the case at all. The yards per carry drop that we saw last year, and actually it's been a pretty steady decline since his rookie year. In 2016, he averaged 5.1. 2017 was a weird year. 2018, 4.7. 2019, 4.5. 2020, 4.0. Now, you could make the case that he's just declining as a player, and that's why the yards per carry is dropping. I don't actually believe that to be the case. The offensive line has really declined, and that's the biggest reason why I think we've seen a less efficient player. That's actually not where my concern is at. It's in the other parts of the game that he can control. The fumbles are a problem, Landon. Like, there's way too many fumbles, and we saw it again last year. 6 fumbles. He did clear it up at the end of the year, And then the drops. Do you know he had 8 drops last year, according to Pro Football Reference? It was just far too many. 2 of the drops ended up getting deflected into the air for interceptions. So I feel like even if he doesn't improve the yards per carry, if he can cut back on the fumbles and the drops, that itself will give the Cowboys a more efficient player. So what do you think about where he can improve?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the things, the under discussed things that about last season, because there was just so many things about last season, was the terrible rash of fumbles that the team suffered. Zeke obviously being the huge part of that, but Dak as well. If you remember, like Dak had several fumbles in the earlier games of the season, and part
Pollard.
of that,
Pollard had one
as well as Pollard. It was an epidemic on the team.
Yeah,
and really, it was part of the reason that the Cowboys were not able to kind of, despite putting up a ton of yards. They struggled to score points early in games and to kind of take that early lead, which really kept a lot of teams in games, which led to some of the exciting finishes that we saw with Dak. But that's not how you want to win these games. No. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that Zeke has got to find a way to clean that up. I think the good thing here is, as you mentioned, is that it seemed to come in a cluster. It's like a lot of those fumbles all came right in the first 4 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, most of them. And actually, this has been a trend with him before. Like, he has these spells where it's a couple fumbles in a couple weeks, and then he goes 10 games without having one. Yeah. I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know.
Yeah, again, I think it's something he definitely has to work on. And
to be honest, the drops are more concerning to me, honestly, because I feel like his hands have gotten worse over the last couple of years. Like, he has 12 drops over the last 2 years, and a lot of those drops aren't
concentration.
But it's also not like they're happening when there's a lot of contact. They're just like on swing routes and all that kind of stuff. And last year, there was a couple drops that were just an absolute killer. Like, if he just catches these passes, he gets easy first downs and the team converts. That's my bigger concern.
Yeah, and that's legitimate. And I think, I don't think that Zeke has good hands. I think this is a case of, like I said, Zeke, especially when you're a running back, you're getting an outlet pass. You're thinking about what's the next move I need to make when I get the football to get, and that's where you see these concentration drops a lot, is when you are wide open, right? And you've moved your mind past the initial seeing the ball into your hands and into your body, and now you're thinking about what you're going to do. Like, you already have the ball and you forget what you should have your focus on. And that happens a lot in those situations where it's 3rd and 3, right? And everything's covered downfield, and Zeke has got wide open outlet to make an easy first down, and then you drop the ball, and then that it's the end of a drive. It's stuff like that has to stop. And I think you hope that you hope a lot of this stuff gets kind of put back into his head by how terrible last season was, right? Like the how awful last season was. It feels like, and you're hoping that this kind of renewed commitment to off-season workout is a sign of this kind of recommitment by Zeke saying, "Hey, I had a terrible year last year. I have to be better. This team relies on me, no matter what my role is, no matter what my split is between him and Pollard, no matter how this plays out, this team relies on me. So I need to at least do the little stuff right, or obviously the Cowboys are going to have problems."
All right, let's predict Zeke's stats this year. I'm going to assume he probably plays, let's say, 16 games. There'll probably be a game where he's, they rest him, or he's a little banged up. So 16 games. Do we see like a 1,200 yard rushing season like we saw, just a couple years ago? Do we see him get back to the 1,400 yard range? What do you envision?
Well, I mean, I think it all depends on how you feel about this team, right? Like,
that's a very good point, right?
I think if the team is good, 1,300 yards could be done. I think 1,200 yards is not unrealistic at all in 16 games. If the Cowboys are finding ways to put these games away early and then let Zeke, take a ton of carries late in the game, I very well could see him having, 13, potentially 1,400 yards, just if he's closing out a ton of games. Obviously that's not a great measure of his success as a player necessarily, but it is a measure of how, how much opportunity he gets to kind of, kill games like that.
All right, let's take a quick break so I can tell you guys about BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season is in full swing, and you can track all the action at BetOnline. Get all the latest news, odds, and info on all your sporting needs, including MLB, NBA, and NHL. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Landon, let's talk about the best backup running back in the NFL, Tony Pollard. What are you expecting from Pollard entering year 3? Like, are we going to see him more in the slot? Do we expect his touches to go up? What are you envisioning happening?
I'm interested to see that too, because I do wonder. I do anticipate his touches kind of going up in the general sense of what we expect the mix between Pollard and Zeke to be, right? Especially like compared to where we were last year going into the season. Mm-hmm. I think, Pollard obviously has proven time and time again to be a very efficient running back and very valuable player on limited touches and as we've seen in some increasing touch situations. So I don't anticipate him going back to kind of the previous role he had, let's say in 2019, right? I think it's going to be more than that. They tell us, and again, we've said this, they tell us that, the Pollard getting snaps at slot wide receiver is due to wide receiver injury or sickness or that sort of thing, and obviously that very well likely is true. I do wonder though, like, is part of the plan to much like much in the sense that that you have 12 personnel, that you have 2 solid tight ends, that if you want to get rotate in some other personnel groups to give some of your wide receivers a rest, that 12 personnel is going to be a good personnel for you because you feel like you were solid with 2 tight ends. Mm-hmm. I wonder if 20 personnel is also like that, right? Where you're going to see Pollard and Zeke out there together. And Pollard being who he is, he's being a very useful player that can kind of line up all over the place. You get everybody in the huddle, and then you kind of spread everybody out and see how they react, and then potentially have a package of plays to run depending on how the defense lines up versus that personnel group. So I do think that there will be more, not just like a series of times that Pollard will get snaps, but also times when we'll see both of them on the field at the same time. I do hope that we also continue to see Pollard being used in other multiple ways to get him the ball, because I think, again, it's like when you talk about personnel and who you want to deploy, who would you rather have out there? Would you rather, if it's time to give CeeDee Lamb or Cooper a breather, would you rather have a 3 wide receiver set with Cedric Wilson? Or would you rather have 20 personnel with Tony Pollard, and Pollard can either line up in the slot or kind of do whatever you need?
The answer is
go
both.
From there.
Both, right? You want to use both. Honestly, you want to have as many different personnel groupings that you feel good about, because you never know when you're going to need them, and you never know which opponent it might work the best against.
And with injuries too, like let's say one of those guys gets hurt.
Yes.
Now suddenly you do need to rely on both of them, right? Just in order to fill up all the different snaps that you're going to need in the game. So I do think that there is a utility to Pollard that will help him get on the field in a variety of different ways. We've talked about that before, but I'm hoping that will be even more availed this year, as they've seen that Pollard is dynamite with the ball in his hands.
Let's talk about where Tony Pollard can improve. I got a couple areas. One, just like Zeke, he needs to cut down on the drops. He had 40 targets last year. He had 4 drops, a 10% drop percentage. Not ideal, especially when a lot of those, again, are coming behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage. I just don't ever think he's going to be like this great inside the tackle runner, but that's okay. It's just not his game. But any other spots you think he can improve?
Yeah, I mean, kind of along the lines of inside running, I think he needs to be careful when getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage and making sure that he's finding a way to use that elusiveness to at least remove negative gains from his game. Because I think that's what happens with a lot of these kind of boom or bust type backs, right? Is that they are Zeke is really good at making sure he doesn't get a negative, a tackle for loss. At the very least, Zeke will probably get a 0-yard gain or a 1-yard gain, or he'll produce a 0-yard gain or a 1-yard gain out of what should have been a negative 4-yard loss, right? Pollard, that's the one thing with Pollard I think that he can just clean up a little bit is when he gets pressure right away when he gets the ball, how does he deal with it? And I think that will make him a better inside runner. But hopefully the Cowboys aren't having to use him in that way a lot. I think the usage should be to try to get him on the outside, wide zone, power to the outside, and then screens and that sort of thing, and getting the ball out in space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact percentage on top of my head, but there was a lot of carries that went for negative or 0 yards. And again, that's not always the running back fault because
no.
My gosh, the offensive line was awful last year. However, there were, I think I can think of the top of my head, like 6 or 7 ones where, yeah, he probably just needs to take the 1-yard gain rather than having a 2-yard loss. Now, he does make up for it because there's a couple runs that he's had through the season where, hey, this should be a 1-yard loss, and he turns it into a 40-yard gain. That's just kind of the player he is. If he can be a tad more consistent, knowing when to pick his spots, I was kind of joking about him being the best backup running back in the league, but if he can get even 10% better there, I do think he has a chance to do that, right? Like, I don't think he's that far away from being a Kareem Hunt level of backup running back. I really don't.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, when you look at what you said is right. When you look at the grand scheme of things, his tackle for losses, his tackles behind the line of scrimmage, they kind of come out in the wash, right? Because he creates so many big plays. But on a per game, per situation basis, a lot of those times they were very big plays and they end up being drive killers or what's not. So it is important that he cleans that up. But I do agree.
I think he can. That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just experience.
If he can do that, we're talking about a pretty special running back because there's just not a lot of guys that in space are as good, as he is. And then on top of that has the speed, the home run speed, right? Like he has legitimate 4.3 speed. Clean up that little part of the game. Continue to cut back on the drops, get better in pass protection. There's absolutely no reason he can't be a starting running back in the NFL sooner rather than later. Before we move on to the other guys on this team, what do you think is the ideal snap split between these guys? Because they are going to both be on the field a lot, but is it like 65-35? Is it 70-30 Zeke? What would you like to see it be?
Man, I swear that those were the percentages that we were talking about like mid-season too, right? Like it feels like the 65-35%, kind of split, the 70-30 split, somewhere in between there.
Can I read you what his splits were like throughout the season? Like starting in week 4, because that's when the season kind of really started getting kicked off. 27-23, 36-33, 22-32, 32, 36-39, 37. He had the start where he had 90%, 47-41.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of slowly tailed off there. I almost think that it almost feels like that percentage should go the opposite direction in season. Right? Like maybe you give Pollard more and more of an even split early on in the season. And then by the end of the season, you're using Zeke as a hammer in a fresher Zeke than you're used to as a hammer later in the season.
I think they should go the opposite way.
You think so?
I think Zeke is fresher in the season. I'd rather have Pollard get more touches as the end of the year comes around and defenses are just slower to react because they're worn down. We've seen this from Pollard before. Like at the end of the year, he starts to get really, really hot. I think early on in the year, 30% seems about right. But when we get closer to November, December, that's when I'd like to see it, kind of creep up to 40%. That's when I think the Cowboys would be at their best.
See, I view it as like the playing style that changes throughout the season, and I think that suits Zeke better. And that's why I would say Pollard early, but we'll see what works out best.
All right. Let's take a quick break so I can tell you guys that Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar out there. It's hard to even explain it. Real chocolate, amazing flavors. It's just a great combination of low calories, high protein, and low sugar with no crazy additives. Best of all, they taste fantastic. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get 10% off your next box at BuiltBar.com. Also want to tell you guys about Rock Auto. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts to customers online for over 20 years. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brand, specifications, and prices that you prefer. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Lena, let's talk about the other running backs on this team. Is there anybody that excites you at all? And who is the RB3 for this team?
I mean, first of all, it's pretty insulting that we've gone this far without having the Seyo Olonilulu versus Nick Ralston debate at fullback. So, I mean, we definitely had to have that at some point.
I thought we were just going to save that for a separate show. Just the
that seems
fullback
fair.
preview.
That seems fair. Look, I thought that Rico Dowdle, when he got opportunities to touch the ball, when we saw him carry the ball, even saw him on a couple kick returns, if I remember correctly, he looks explosive. He looks like a guy who is kind of a lightning in a bottle sort of character. He's a little bit compact, but he has such great explosiveness and speed that I like him a lot as a third running back. I think he showed you a little bit in special teams last year, at least as a kick returner. I do wonder if he might be a little bit undersized for coverage units, which you kind of need a running back who can run in coverage units.
Yeah.
He's like 5'10", maybe 5'11".
Yeah.
And so, you worry about that, but I do think that as far as, if he had to get into the game and take carries, I wouldn't be terrified, and then, you've got the Tiffin kids, Jaquan and what's his name? I completely forgot.
Jaquan Hardy.
Jaquan Hardy, that's right. He's like we talked about. I really like this tape.
Yep.
It was against a bunch of accountants and
Future
lawyers,
podcasters.
Yeah, future podcast. Probably guys are gonna take our jobs then eventually. But but I think that he has something there. It'll be interesting. He'll get a ton of opportunity when it comes training camp time. And then I think we really do got to talk about Seyo Olonilulu and Nick Ralston. And because I do think that both of them are fullbacks by name, but I think that they both can be guys who, if you need to, can carry the football. They both will be, if they make the team, special teams players big time. And I think there is still some use for a fullback, a couple of snaps a game, a couple of snaps a season. And we see McCarthy get good use out of a fullback before. John Kuhn was a valuable player for him at Green Bay, and I think that kind of player can be deployed properly. It can be a difficult mismatch player depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm still curious to see if they carry a fullback on this roster, because with Dalton Schultz getting significantly better last year, they brought in now the tight end slipping my mind.
Jeremy Pinkston.
Jeremy Sprinkle. Sprinkle, Sean McEwen, Nick Eubanks, who they signed from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure they're going to have a spot on the roster for a fullback. The third running back job is interesting because there's not a lot of proven guys there. So if Zeke were to go down for an extended period of time, my guess is, Landon, they probably wouldn't rely on Hardy or Rico. They would probably go out and get a veteran.
Yeah, I agree.
But as we've been mentioning the last couple of shows, there's no rush to go out and sign a Todd Gurley or a Duke Johnson or a Devontae Freeman right now. There's no reason to do it. If they need one of those guys, they'll be available, and I think they'll be okay. Any final thoughts on this running back position?
everybody runs the same run schemes. You know, every running back that's in the NFL knows how to run wide zone, knows run inside zone, knows how to run power. They're all the same. So you don't need to bring those.
You meant running backs are all the same, right?
They run all the same schemes, and and look, to your point, everyone that's on the street at this point is the same. You know, so signing one and trying to protect one so that you have him when you need him is pointless, because the guy that you get at the end of training camp is going to be the exact same guy that you get now. I will concede that point for sure, that unspecial running backs definitely don't make a difference. So
I really missed the opportunity to have my running backs don't matter mug on this show. It's a missed opportunity by me.
It is.
I'll try to be better next time.
I'll have my believe one, to be honest. And I think able to counteract each other. Right?
Overall, pretty good running back core for the Cowboys. I think if one of those guys at the end of the roster can break out or have a big training camp in preseason, wouldn't be surprised if they catch on to the roster. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can download and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mo.